Hi guys, welcome to video lecture number 4, Drawing the Lunar Cycle. What I want to do in this video is give you some ways to remember the correct sequence of events in the lunar cycle. And I also want to give you a few tips on how to use a diagram to predict what phase of the moon you will see next. Go ahead and pause the video and write down the essential question. So generally a good way to remember something is to make an acronym to go with the information. So I have an acronym for the lunar cycle that is called Snef-doc, S-N-E-F-D-O-C. And you might be asking yourself, what on earth is Snef-doc? Well, it's an acronym that helps you remember the order of the lunar phases. So when you're drawing this out, I'd like you to draw it the way that I do in this video as a memory aid to help you predict the sequence of events in the lunar cycle. So let's write it out. SNEF stands for the sun, the new moon, the earth, and the full moon. We'll go ahead and draw a little sun to get a visual representation going on. And I'm going to move these preset moons into position along with the earth just to make our model a little bit better. If you're drawing the lunar cycle, I would take the time to actually draw out the earth and make the model as good as you can. Now that we've drawn the new moon and the full moon, this acronym is for the view of the moon as it is seen from the earth. So we'll draw the actual moon phases, the appearance or the changing shapes of the moon from the earth. So you know that when the new moon is between the sun and the earth, even though half of the moon is illuminated, the half that we can see is in darkness. So remember, even though half the moon is illuminated, we'll shade in the entire new moon because that is our view, our perspective from the earth. Maybe to help you remember that, we'll draw a little man on the earth looking up at the new moon. The full moon, as it is seen from the earth, right here, is completely illuminated. Half of the moon is illuminated, and the only thing that we can see is the illuminated half. So that's what SNEF stands for. It stands for sun, new moon, earth, and then full moon. In this diagram, the doc stands for the quarter moons. So let's remind ourselves that as the moon goes around the earth, this is happening. It's revolving around the earth in a counterclockwise fashion. No matter where you draw the sun, remember that the moon, like everything else we've studied, orbits counterclockwise. So where does the doc come in? The doc is for the first and third quarter moons. Let's go ahead and move them into position. You already know that the first and third quarter moons are perpendicular with the earth and the sun. So how do you remember that during the waxing phases of the moon, the light is visible on the right? Doc helps you remember this by using letter shapes. So if we want to make the first quarter moon, which is down here, look like a D, we have to shade in the left-hand side of the moon, right? The illuminated portion is in a nice D shape. The O in doc is the full moon, and we're going to make the third quarter moon into a C shape so that we get it modeled correctly. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Shade in the right-hand side. So that's the acronym, SNEF-doc. It puts the sun, the new moon, the earth, and the full moon in order and helps you remember the first and third quarter moon by using the letter D and by using the letter D and the letter C up here. Let's talk about our crescent and our gibbous moons. So we've got 4 lunar phases to go. The reason I like this diagram is it helps you remember how to shade in all of the moon phases. If you know that the moon slowly gets bigger and you know that it's orbiting the earth counterclockwise, this is our next lunar phase, you know that this moon is going to have to be smaller than the first quarter moon. That's the dead giveaway that this is a crescent moon. So let's shade it in, and just like the first quarter moon, the crescent is going to be seen on the right-hand side. The moon slowly gets bigger, and so this phase of the moon is going to have to be larger than the first quarter moon. We'll shade it in so that it is a correct, we'll shade it in so that it's a correct waxing gibbous moon. Again, the light is seen on the right-hand side. And then we know after the full moon, the lunar phases are waning. The moon gets smaller and smaller in the second half of its orbit, and that it is slowly shrinking. So now we have a gibbous moon at the next position following the full moon that has the same shape, that bulging gibbous shape, but is visible on the left-hand portion of the moon. So we've got our waning gibbous, and last of all, third quarter and waning crescent, where the light is visible on the left-hand side. If you're drawing this before a test, I would go ahead and take the time to label the moon phases. It won't take you long, and it will help you predict what's coming next. So new and full are already a little bit labeled there. I'm going to abbreviate. This is waxing crescent. This is the first quarter. We have the waxing gibbous moon, the full moon, and then we have the waning gibbous moon, the third quarter moon, and the waning crescent moon. Why is this useful? It's useful to draw it out because often on tests you will be asked to predict a sequence of events in the lunar cycle. Let me give you an example. You might get an image of a waxing crescent moon and be asked what the moon will look like in 14 days, and your answer choices might be a various set of lunar phases. If you draw the diagram and you know that the total lunar cycle is 28 days, then you can divide your diagram up according to time. Day 1 is the new moon. It takes 28 days for one full revolution. 28 is divisible by 4. So at each quarter, we can add 7 days. The first quarter represents the 7th day of the lunar cycle. The full moon is the 14th day of the lunar cycle. And the third quarter moon is the 21st day of the lunar cycle. Let's go back to that hypothetical question. If you're shown the image of a waxing crescent moon and asked what the moon would look like in 14 days, we simply go halfway across the lunar cycle. It would be a waning gibbous moon. If you are shown a third quarter moon and asked what the moon will look like in 7 days, you can simply follow your model and the time scale to the correct answer, a new moon. Thanks for watching. I hope Snef-doc helps you out as you memorize the lunar phases and try and interpret and predict the sequence of events in the lunar cycle.